Asked whether the EU should reopen the channels of communication with the Kremlin, the mayor of Warsaw replied that the most important thing is that the voice of the Ukrainian people be heard. The idea of re-establishing contacts with Moscow is backed by some countries such as France, Italy and Austria in order not to rely solely on the White House in the ongoing negotiations to end Russia's war in Ukraine. It is fundamental for the Europeans to be involved and to keep supporting Ukraine, Rafał Trzaskowski told Euronews flagship program Europe Today.
At the same time, we need to be helping the Ukrainians because they were actually fighting for our freedom and they were providing us security. They were giving us breathing space when it comes to rebuilding our security because the Russian threat is there. And if this war ends with Putin's success, then this is the gravest threat for the European security.
The Warsaw mayor also called for Europeans to invest more in defense.
We are strengthening our eastern border. We are investing as much as we can. We are taking responsibility ourselves, exactly as President Trump wanted. Now we need to convince other Europeans to do the same.
At the same time, keeping the Americans involved in the negotiations is a question of European security, he says.
This is the time for new pragmatic trade deals. That was the message from a European delegation here in Dubai at a conference led by the United Arab Emirates. This is a European Union that wants to make and cut deals with the world, the way we've seen with Latin America and the Mercosur, but also very recently India. It's also a way to cushion the impact from the tariffs put forward by President Trump and China's growing trade surplus with the world. Today, speaking to Euronews, the Latvian Prime Minister told us, quote, "We are a very attractive market of 500 million people who wouldn't want to make a deal with us, but we also need to reach out to the world." And that means the Gulf through the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which includes the United Arab Emirates, but also Saudi Arabia and Qatar, among others. The EU's envoy for the region also told us the institutional framework is now laid out, but this is really now about political talks. This deal has been stuck for 20 years over sticking points that go for market access, but also political questions. The GCC insist they see this as a trade deal, a way to do business. It's not about the politics or values. The European Union, on the other hand, they say they will always push for the best climate regulation, social protections, and workers' rights. But this is also a European Union that is willing now to be and get more pragmatic in the interest of a deal. Maria Tadeo in Dubai for Euronews.
Greek authorities arrested a major general on espionage charges. He is reported to have confessed to passing classified information to China. According to the same sources, he had access to NATO information due to his position and the role he had assumed last summer and was identified through the QR code he used to access files. The arrest was made by officials from the National Intelligence Service acting on reports from the Secret Service of another country. He was placed under discreet surveillance and his arrest at the time was made because the information he was leaking had become more sensitive. According to the announcement by the Hellenic National Defense General Staff, the arrest took place within a military area in cooperation with other services in the presence of an authorized prosecuting authority. It was also noted that the arrest was made following clear indications of criminal acts under the Military Penal Code, namely the collection and transmission of classified military information to third parties with the risk of causing damage to national interests. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk arrived in Kiev at the invitation of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The visit began with symbolic acts of remembrance. The leaders of both countries signed a letter of intent on the joint production of weapons and ammunition. Donald Tusk also announced the implementation of another aid package worth 200 million Polish zloty, which will mainly include armored equipment for Ukraine. He also said that his country is ready to transfer MiG-29 fighter jets.
Wiem, że Ukraina potrzebuje rozmaitego typu form obrony powietrznej, w tym przede wszystkim pewnego typu pociski, rakiety. Nie we wszystkim my możemy pomóc. Jeśli nadal utrzymamy tę potrzebę migów, to Polska jest gotowa w tej chwili przekazać te migi. My mówiliśmy tutaj o wzajemnej wymianie i Ukraina jest gotowa do tej wymiany. Mówimy tutaj o ukraińskich dronach.
Volodymyr Zelensky repeatedly thanked the Polish side, focusing on the most pressing issue, the energy crisis in Ukraine.
Codziennie praktycznie Rosjanie próbują zniszczyć w naszych miastach, w naszych wsiach możliwość istnienia w ogóle, przebywania. I bardzo ważne dlatego dla nas jest to, że nasi partnerzy są dziś z nami, są dziś tutaj, wspierają Ukrainę i Ukraińców.
Despite declarations of a suspension of attacks for the winter, Russian strikes on infrastructure continue. According to local authorities, more than 1,100 buildings in Kiev alone were left without heating, and nighttime temperatures approached minus 20 degrees Celsius. The Polish government has sent at least 379 power generators and 18 heaters from the government agency for strategic reserves. Several hundred more were donated by local authorities, non-governmental organizations, and church organizations.
The Dutch military has got a new high-profile volunteer as it seeks to boost recruitment to counter growing fears about peace and security in Europe. Queen Maxima, the 54-year-old Argentinian-born wife of King William Alexander, started training this week to become a reserve member of her adopted homeland's army. According to the Royal House of Orange, once Queen Maxima has completed training, she will be given the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and will deploy wherever needed. Expected to be sworn in later this month, the incoming Dutch coalition government has plans to boost the nation's military from some 70,000 to 120,000 staff. The Royal House of Orange stated that Queen Maxima, like many others, wants to make a contribution to that security. Maxima is following her own daughter into the military after Crown Princess Amalia, the heir to the Dutch throne, completed her basic military training last month as a volunteer reservist in the army. Royals across Europe have a tradition of enlisting, recently also across genders.
One day earlier this spring, we received a photograph of a foot drawn in red chalk, framed up with a portrait of a man. It went to our drawing specialist in New York, Jada Damon, who looked at it, immediately recognized something really, really special, rang up the consignor and jumped on a plane to California to go and have a look at it. And of course, in the flesh, it was as exciting as she saw it to be from the original photo, and she brought it back with her to New York that night. Then she took it to the Met, and she took it to the Met because she saw that it was a foot related to Michelangelo's Libyan Sibyl on the Sistine ceiling. Famously, on 4 occasions, he's known to have burnt all of his drawings. So very few survive. For the Sistine ceiling, there's only 50 drawings in existence, and there's only one behind me in private ownership. So this is your only chance to buy a piece of perhaps the greatest work of art ever painted.
So when you look at a cat, your brain might fire in a certain way that we can record on the fMRI machine. And that's a signature pattern for the cat. And then if I show you something very different, like an inanimate object, like a tree, your pattern of response could be completely different. And in adults, we know that this is very reliable and consistent, and we can get distinct responses for things like categories or animate and inanimate objects in adults, but we still didn't really know whether this was true in infants yet. So that's exactly what we were looking for in the infants. When we show them, say, 3 different images of the same category, we can see that there is a reliable response in their brain pattern across those 3 images. So this tells us that when you're viewing the same images from a certain category, your brain is already able to distinguish that they're an individual thing that should be grouped together by 2 months of age. Infants know a lot more than we thought that they did, and their brains are processing the world around them in hugely complex ways. They're not just lying there passively waiting until they can move around themselves and speak. There's a lot of complex cognitive development happening within the first year of life, and now with this type of method we can really start to measure that.